ESKOM has announced the implementation of Stage 6 load shedding over the weekend. According to Rand Water, load shedding will impact the replenishing of a vast number of reservoirs across parts of Johannesburg, which ran dry during infrastructure upgrades. Should the country be hit again by a severe cold front with predictions of snow, how much strain will be placed on the grid? And more concerning, should South Africans brace themselves for even higher stages of load shedding? Joining us is Professor Mark Swilling, co-director of the Centre for Sustainability Transitions at Stellenbosch University. Professor, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Should South Africans brace themselves for higher stages of load shedding, given the current implications?
I don't think we can state for certain that we will go to higher stages of load shedding. But what we should brace ourselves for is stage 6 as the new normal. So we've enjoyed a kind of honeymoon period of lower stages for the last couple of weeks. But that is probably coming to an end. We might hit for short periods of time stage 8, but I doubt it.
Mm-hmm. What is it that perhaps needs to be considered here, looking at the relief that we endured over the past few weeks and, the Rand Water having issues also with pumping stations and ensuring that water does indeed reach residents' taps? Load shedding has been cited as one of the factors there, and also looking at the cold front that's coming up.
Well, obviously the cold front is going to result in greater use of energy, which in turn is going to put greater strain on the grid. And if we have unplanned breakdowns, which is what's pushed us now into stage 6, then we are looking at a pretty serious situation. And as we know, load shedding affects everything. So, it's not just the pumping of water, it's also the pumping of sewage, which is now going to pollute rivers. It affects businesses, it affects households. But we've been warned by many, including the Minister of Electricity, that we should expect our worst winter ever. We already have more load shedding in 2023 than we had in 2022. But 2023 is definitely going to be our worst year ever, and this is going to be our worst winter.
And what are some of the strides that can be taken by residents during this time as we prepare for the worst?
Well, obviously you can conserve energy, but many households now are working out their own solutions. Ever since stage 6 became a kind of new normal, we've seen a massive upsurge in rooftop solar as more and more households get batteries and solar panels. The budget speech in February by the Minister of Finance announced tax incentives for businesses in particular, but also a little bit for houses, a subsidy for houses. So that's also contributing to the massive increase in the installations of rooftop solar. Many of the installers are completely overwhelmed with requests. So that's how South Africans are coping. Even in poorer communities, in informal settlements, you see an increasing spread of the use of solar panels for lighting, cell phone charging, even TVs.
And we heard Interim ESKOM Group CEO Khalib Kasim speaking about the mitigation plan when it comes to load shedding and a focus on energy availability factor of power stations. Perhaps just give us a broader idea of what all of that entails.
Well, basically, ever since the appointment of the Minister of Electricity, we see greater policy and strategy coherence. And basically, this involves action on a number of fronts. Fixing the machines as far as possible without too much capital available to do that, because the Minister of Finance has insisted that ESKOM cannot borrow any money to fix the machines, so they have to use the capital they have available from their income. So that's not a lot. And so they're doing the best they can. If they can push the energy availability factor up to 60%, which I think is probably the best that they can achieve, then we could stay at around stages 4 and thereabouts. So on the other front, the Minister of Electricity is emphasizing energy efficiency, reducing demand, buying energy from the Southern African Power Pool, bringing in batteries on a much bigger scale, and more effective, and investing in the grid so that more and more renewables can be attached to the grid to put electrons onto the grid. And we have a large amount of renewables in the pipeline. Up to 30 gigawatts is now in the process of being implemented over the next 2 to 3 years, and that will bring load shedding to an end. Mm-hmm.
So in the meantime, as we go through the higher levels of load shedding, how much time, if it's a matter of time being allocated to that in order to maintain some sort of stability and reduce the higher levels of load shedding, what will that look like?
Well, what South Africans don't always understand is that higher levels of load shedding is what protects us from a blackout. It's not. Some people think that as we go higher and higher, we get closer and closer to a blackout. Mm-hmm. Load shedding is to make sure that the grid doesn't collapse because of just excessive demand without supply. The load shedding is switching off different regions in a systematic way, so that on the whole, the grid can continue to operate. So I think what we will see through the rest of the winter is this constant zigzagging between stages 3 and 4, 6, maybe 7, maybe 8. But I think going higher than stage 6 will be a rare occasion. Mm. But I think what we can predict is hitting stage 6 more often than we've seen in the last 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well. Thank you so much for your time. Professor Mark Swilling, co-director of the Center for Sustainability Transitions at Stellenbosch University, giving us a breakdown of what the load shedding factor looks like in South Africa and what it means for the next few weeks with the cold front and the water issues in Johannesburg.